Well, I'll make it short and sweet. Firstly, I'd like to thank Shep and Melvin for their fantastic support in building our ecosystem. I know we don't have a lot of people here tonight. A lot of people signed up but haven't turned up. That's fine, but I just hear that there's the long weekend coming, so maybe that's what it's all about. We've got a fabulous presenter here tonight, Buck Purley, who's been kind enough to offer to come along and show us a way of jump-starting from ordinary programming to blockchain programming. And it's nice, quick and easy, and he's going to explain how to do that. So I'm going to pass it over to him. Again, thanks to Shep and Mullen for hosting us, and thanks, Buck.
All right. Well, thank you all for showing up on this beautiful evening in San Francisco and coming indoors for the evening. All right, yeah, so presentation, accessible and simplified Bitcoin development with bcoin. I'll talk a little bit about what bcoin is in a minute and how that can make developing for Bitcoin a little bit easier. First, brief introduction about myself. I am an engineering lead at Purse.io, currently working on the bcoin team, which is the open source Bitcoin project that we help maintain. My background is actually not in development, but is in economics and Chinese language and society. Just studied, I got a bachelor's double major at the University of Toronto. So this sort of gives me, I guess, a different insight on the approach to blockchain development, because I came to development sort of from the outside, and also came to cryptocurrency from the outside. Since I've been following it since about 2014, and only working full-time in the industry last year, but I got introduced to crypto through an economics podcast that I was listening to, Econ Talk, and I was doing some freelance web development at the time and did an interview, and I was sort of reading about the Federal Reserve and how money works and all the things that I was hearing. I was like, oh, this seems interesting. I was also living in China at the time and doing a lot of freelance development. And so one of the things that happens with freelance development is you get paid in, well, you're not very liquid, so you get paid sort of by the project. And so sometimes you could go a month or two without getting paid, and then it'll come all at once. And then also I get paid maybe in the US or in China. And so it was kind of hard for me to get money to where I needed it. And so when I heard about Bitcoin, I actually had a use case for it. So I heard about it, so I started experimenting with it, and to test it out for the first time, I sent myself $1 from my account in China to my account in the US, and it happened almost right away. It was free. I think I actually made money off the exchange rate fluctuations, and it was just $1. So I was like, okay, this thing is going to change the world. And so I've been following it ever since, and here I am. I've been back in, I guess it was last year, in 2017, I helped organize a cryptocurrency hackathon called Bitcoin for Your Thoughts, and we did it again this year. It's called Crypto for Your Thoughts now, and through that I started working with Purse and the Bitcoin project. So, Bitcoin. What I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to start off a little bit and talk about consensus in blockchains and what that sort of means when you're developing for in the blockchain space. The state of Bitcoin and blockchain development as it is today, and sort of what that means for the ecosystem, and kind of some of the problems that are introduced because of the difficulties of developing for consensus. And one of the solutions we think for that actually is Bitcoin. And so we'll talk a little bit about Bitcoin, the problems it solves, how it solves them, what it looks like developing with Bitcoin, and then the current state of Bitcoin development, some of the things that my team is working on, that we hope to see in the future. And then finally, this project that we're working on called bPanel, which we're calling a blockchain management system, which we hope to sort of turn into this new area of blockchain development. Okay. So, consensus and blockchains. Consensus is hard. This is a quote from Satoshi Nakamoto. I think it was probably around 2010. Satoshi is no longer with us, at least his, her, or they online identity. But he once said that basically alternative implementation of Bitcoin, or really any consensus critical protocol, would not work. And there's good reason to believe that, and that's because, as this is the top there, consensus is hard. And what is consensus? So you can see here, they say that, he says, so much of the design depends on all nodes getting exactly identical results in lockstep that a second implementation would be a menace to the network. And so we've actually, on the bcoin team, sort of adopted this moniker, and we have sweatshirts that say menace to the network on it, and bcoin is the menace implementation. It's fun. Okay, what does it mean that consensus is hard? Why is it difficult to code an alternative implementation? Well, if you do something different from the network, you can fork. So we hear a lot now, if you're following cryptocurrency at all, we hear a lot about how, about purposeful forks. You know, the famous one in Bitcoin is the block size debate, where there are alternative implementations that want to cause an upgrade that increases the block size. That's a deliberate one. Ethereum has had some forks to change the protocol. And what a fork basically means is you make a change that's not backwards compatible. So any node that's not running a compatible version of the system can't keep up. But this causes a problem in that mistakes can be permanent, because if you do something different, if you make a mistake and you fork off from the network, well then the node you have is useless. You can't exchange Bitcoin in a node that has a mistake in it with another node that has forked off and has done an upgrade, which is why they're so contentious, because anybody that does not get around to making this upgrade will, you could lose funds, but more likely you lose access to your funds. You can't transact with, you're in a different network. So this last point here, bugs must be reproduced, they become consensus rules. This is interesting. So if in a reference implementation you code something in that's actually a bug, once you have a transaction that has been sent off into the network that has one of these bugs implemented in it, every other implementation, every node has to re-implement that bug. There's a famous one of these in Bitcoin. It's in the multi-sig opcode. So this is a somewhat pseudocode version of a Bitcoin script. This is what a multi-signature contract looks like. Does everyone know what a multi-signature contract is? So multi-signature contract is so normal payments are just I'm releasing funds from my wallet to somebody else's wallet. Multi-signature transaction or multi-signature wallet says I need not just a signature from my wallet, but from M of N other people. So this is an example of a 2 of 3 contract, which says that we have 3 public keys, A, B, and C. So you need 3 signatures, or of 3 signatures, you need 2 signatures in order to release the funds. So that's a multi-sig. That's a 2 of 3. And Bitcoin, I think you can get up to 20 it'll support, and that's really just because of the size of the transaction. You can do 1 of 1, you can do 2 of 2, you can do 2 of 15. Now the bug here is you'll notice here that there's this strange 0 here. So this is the 2 signatures out of 3. So all of this sort of makes sense, and then this is a code that operates and checks the signatures. So it checks, okay, are these 2 of 3 signatures, do they satisfy the condition? What's this 0 doing here? And that's because when check multisig was first implemented, it would pop the first item off of the stack, but really do nothing with it. So that meant that if you didn't have something at the front of the stack, it would take off the first signature, and you would just be left with 1 signature, and it would say 2, and then it all breaks. So now whenever you write a multi-signature contract, we typically just do an op0 at the beginning, but it really can be anything because it's not going to be used at all. So this is a bug that was in the original implementation of check multisig, and now, including in bcoin, which is an alternative implementation, we had to code that bug in. So you have to, if you're writing another implementation, you have to do every single one of these bugs, every single feature, exactly as the rest of the network will expect it. So there's a lot of risk also to using another alternative implementation, because if there's some edge case that somebody hasn't encountered yet, that somebody hasn't tested for, your node, if your business is relying on it, if you're mining on it, you become vulnerable to the consequences of that. There are some problems, though, when you're relying on just a single implementation, and that's you're sort of stuck with whatever coding decisions, whatever style guide that they're using, whatever language that they're using. And so Bitcoin Core, the Bitcoin D, was originally meant to just be a daemon. It was not meant to be a library. And so this can be difficult for businesses. Like the company that I work for now, I should have said this at the beginning, I work for Purse.io, and Purse is an e-commerce platform that lets you buy anything on Amazon with Bitcoin, and starting next month, Bitcoin Cash as well. And so we're not operating a single node as a miner. We're managing hundreds of thousands of wallet accounts. So we have a huge volume of addresses and transactions that we're keeping an eye on. And that's the biggest part of what we're running. But we don't care so much about the miner, the node we need to validate. But when you build your code base to be a daemon and not a library, it doesn't offer the flexibility of that. And so we were using Bitcoin D along with a couple other libraries to satisfy our needs, but it was pretty cumbersome. Bitcoin Core, there's some theory that Satoshi is just not, he was more familiar with the sort of game theory economics behind the structure of Bitcoin, but his coding style was maybe a little bit out of date, not very well tested, not very good test coverage. So it's riddled with global state, which is it's not good coding practice. It's not an accessible library. I got a code snippet in a second. It's really hard to read and really hard to follow the logic. It's also all written entirely in C++. And so you need to have a deep knowledge of C++ if you want to get involved with understanding how the code works. And not everybody, especially today with all the different coding languages, all the different platforms that you can code for, not everybody knows C++, nor should they have to. Another problem is it lacks any formal specifications for implementations. This is just we have BIPs that they really are guidelines unless it's consensus critical about how to develop things, but that's not, it's also not fully about how to implement it. And so you can see here, this is an example of some Bitcoin Core code. It's, you don't even have to be able to read code, just know that that's just pretty ugly. Not fun to read if you're trying to introduce yourself to how this stuff works. You see something like that, like, yeah, okay, I'll just move on and use something else. Solidity looks so much prettier. That's still not, it's not the code, but yeah. Okay, so enter bcoin. So bcoin started off, it was originally created by Fedor Indutny. It's his tag on GitHub and Twitter, I believe. It was originally written as an SPV node. And an SPV node, for those who don't know, is a simplified payment verification. And it lets you verify transactions without the entire blockchain history. So where right now the full Bitcoin blockchain is about 150 gigabytes, it's 400 gigabytes if you're doing the entire indexing of the transaction address database. SPV node, it's far smaller. It's maybe, I don't know, 10 gigabytes. I have to double check. But so it originally created as an SPV implementation written in JavaScript. And then the CTO at Purse, Christopher Jeffrey, aka JJ, sort of took on the project and built out not just a full node, not just a wallet implementation, also a miner, the mempool, the chain, all in there. Today it's used, and it's the most performant, which I'll get to in a bit, but it was far more performant, certainly at the levels of the wallets that we use than even C++. So one thing that's a lot of, especially any old school developers, they say, oh, you went from C++ to JavaScript? Isn't that just for, doing animations on a web browser? Not very performant. And actually, if JavaScript is written well, it can actually be as performant, if not more performant in some cases. And the code that JJ and Fedor wrote approaches that. So companies across the industry are using it now as a result of that because it operates at the scale that we need. These are just some of them that are openly advertising that they're using it. So it's an alternative implementation of the Bitcoin protocol. It's a fully validating node. It's consensus aware. It recognizes and follows those bugs that I was talking about earlier. Written entirely in JavaScript, which means that you can actually run a node in the browser as well, which is super cool. And it's extremely modular. So that problem of not being a library meant that you can use pieces of, and I got an example of that in a second, you can use pieces of the code base and just run your mempool, just have the blockchain. We're working on pulling out the indexing, so you can run just a transaction indexer totally separate of everything else. It runs off of JavaScript's event emitters. So these are just some of the proxying events that operate throughout bcoin. If you're not familiar with JavaScript or Bitcoin, this won't mean too much to you, but what this sort of means is you have these different things operating on their own. The pool will emit a block event. And without there being this tight coupling between the pool and the chain code, what you end up happening is the pool just emits a block event. The chain will be listening for a block event, and then it can add the block. It can process the information that comes in with that event, which also means that you can write other libraries that listen for those events and operate with that block information as well, totally separately, which is really convenient when building out tooling. So this is an example of this. Here we go. Like compared to that, again, even if you don't read code, this is not the same operation as that last bit of code, but you can see it's way more readable, way cleaner to initiate something. So here we are. We're just importing Bitcoin. We are starting up a new chain. We open the chain, and when if we get the first block, console log it out. Yeah, same here. This is syncing the blockchain with the pool. Once it opens, you start the sync. So it's straightforward. When I started with Bitcoin last year, there was almost no documentation. I didn't have very much experience at all coding with blockchain, but you can dig into the code kind of and follow along and see what's happening, which is really nice. Something else that we've been doing is building out a plugin system. So you can write plugins that attach to these events and do something with them as part of your node. So even if it's not built into the library itself, you can build out some extra functionality. So this is a simple plugin that will just announce when you've connected to a new peer. And so we write out our plugin. All it needs is an open, a close, and these are custom methods, and an init function. We start up our node, have a full node, attach the plugin to it, and then once we connect to a new peer, this function will just run on its own. And then we can also use the method from the plugin here, say peers, and it will list out the peers. So it has access to that information. Again, this is the loose coupling. So some of the things that we are working on. We are working on a library called bmultisig, and this is a custom multi-signature library that we've built. It exists separate of the Bcoin library, but you can attach it on, you can connect it to your node. It actually runs a separate server. You just have to point it to the node so it can get transaction information. It's using all Bcoin tools. bledger, which is a re-implementation of the Ledger API. We hope to be supporting Trezor and other hardware wallets soon, but re-implementation of the Ledger API written entirely with Bcoin. As I said earlier, we are making the indexers, such as the transaction address indexers, we're separating them out, making them more modular. This also allows for custom indexers, so you can do things like create an indexer that stores a database of all op return transactions. So an op return is a way that you can store data on the Bitcoin blockchain, and you can create an indexer that has a separate database that lists out all of the op returns. You can even do separate filtering that says, look for op returns that have this prefix code, because there's some companies there's one company called Proof of Existence, which lets you store data onto the blockchain, and they'll prefix it with their own code and have a separate database of that without having to rely on a company's sort of proprietary information to do this. You can just have an open source indexer that attaches onto your own Bitcoin node. It's pretty cool. Neutrino Light clients. For anybody that follows developments in the Lightning Network, Neutrino is this new light client, Bitcoin. It's not really an implementation, but it's a new system for light clients that is about 50% lighter than SPV, which makes it much more practical for mobile use, and 100% more private than the Bloom filters that are used in SPV. And we're building out and implementing it. It's built into BTCD, which is a Go implementation of Bitcoin, and we now have it in Bitcoin as well. So we're hoping to have, for that to hopefully allow for sort of like a browser extension that's running a Neutrino Light client wallet. You can do it on your phone as well. And it's also necessary if you want to use a Bitcoin node as a backend for Lightning. And finally, we just released, we released it last week. It's still in development, but Bcash, which is our Bitcoin Cash implementation of Bitcoin. If you want to learn more and get started with developing in the Bitcoin protocol level, we've got a very accessible REST and RPC API. If you've developed with any sort of API docs like PayPal, Facebook, whatever, if you can read those, you can read these, so you can get a node up and running and then interact with it through the REST or RPC API. We have guides online doing everything from basic scripting to writing multi-signature contracts. I wrote a custom guide for doing a crowdfunding transaction in Bitcoin scripts, which basically allows you to create a transaction that has a set amount. Let's say I want to raise 1 Bitcoin for whatever, for my project, and then other people can contribute smaller funds than the 1 full Bitcoin. And once you've reached a total amount of funding, then that transaction is valid and can be sent out to the blockchain. And so we have a guide that sort of walks you through how you would build this out with Bitcoin. What's cool about this too is you can write the transaction in Bitcoin, but use a Bitcoin core node to transmit that transaction. So because it's modular, you can just use pieces of it to solve individual problems. We're also on Slack and on GitHub and IRC and Twitter, which I don't have here, but I have the last slide at Bitcoin. But there's more. I'm going to share with you a little bit of bPanel, which is a blockchain management system. This is something we've been developing for about the past 6 months, and something I'm personally very excited about. It's something that I started once I joined on board with Bitcoin. So the problem that we saw was that blockchains they're decentralized, which is great. Anybody can start using it and get involved with it. But the technology is pretty obscure. It's very different. It's very new. It's very complicated, and it's kind of dangerous to get playing with. It's one thing to sort of be building your own website to play around and teach yourself JavaScript or HTML and CSS. It's another thing altogether to be if you're doing anything with cryptocurrency, you're dealing with money, right? You put real money into it, you don't want to lose it, that's scary. So we are generally tied, this is not just in Bitcoin, I think this is a problem all over the space, we're tied to the interfaces that other companies and the sort of higher level devs have created for us. Has a couple problems. One is that we're tied with the vulnerabilities that they built into their system that they may or may not be aware of. It's also a problem for adding new features because, especially if it's a business doing it, businesses have their own use cases that they're trying to solve. They have their own customer base. Generally, you're trying to solve for the lowest common denominator, a solution that solves a problem that the most number of people, that it will address for the most number of people. But that can leave a sizable minority sometimes that might be missing out. Right, so how do we solve this? Basically what I wanted to do is how do you decentralize the development of user interfaces, essentially? How do you decentralize the development of user interfaces on top of blockchains, especially for such an obscure and security-conscious technology? So we decided to think about this based off of what I'm thinking of as the WordPress model. So WordPress is a content management system. And what WordPress and other systems like it, like Joomla, Drupal did, was to create a new way to interact with centralized databases. what was really nice, and WordPress was did the strongest with this, was you didn't have to, so back in the early 2000s, if you wanted to make your own website, you needed to have security professionals, IT professionals, people that were familiar with databases, HTML, CSS, front end, all this sort of stuff. You had to have teams and money, or you would be tied to a sort of a set platform. If it's like a blogging platform, okay, you're blogging on top of that platform and you're sort of stuck with the themes and the look that they give you. So what WordPress and other content management systems did was they enabled this explosion of development around the interfaces. So even though WordPress started off as a blogging platform, today it powers portions of the New York Times. You can share your photography on it. You can share music on it. You can sell books on it. You can do blogging. You can have communities and build forums on it. And all of these things. And you can build this site just a single person without any coding experience, just because you can look through a library of available plugins and themes and make the thing look exactly like you want. And then if you want to change it a little bit more, customize it yourself, you can dig into the code a little bit. And it's sort of you don't have to be an expert in order to start digging. So we wanted to do that for blockchains. So we wanted to create a new way to interact with decentralized databases, so that you could build an interface that can interact with this database that's sort of running in the ether, and this new financial and legal and community network that we have been creating over these past few years. So I'll talk a little bit about sort of the design philosophy behind it, and then I got a quick demo about what this looks like, what it looks like to install plugins, and what it looks like to develop plugins for bPanel on top of bcoin. So bPanel is built entirely around plugins. As you'll see in a second, a blank bPanel install without any plugins it basically has nothing in it. But you can customize your interface. So rather than so right now, if you want to get a wallet, you download Copay or something. You are stuck with the functionalities and the interfaces that they give you. You can add new wallets, but you're still stuck with that general interface. But what if you could download a plugin that does multi-sig? What if you could download a plugin that gives you a block explorer? What if you were a business and you wanted to download a plugin that could help you view the transaction histories of the transactions of your customers to see where these things are moving around within your business? You can all do that all within the same platform. Again, just like WordPress, you could download different plugins for different use cases. Easy to install and customize. So the goal, we're still sort of in a pre-beta phase, but you don't really have to know much or any code to install these plugins and to make these customizations. It's using widely popular web technologies, React, Redux, Docker, Node, and Express.js in order to build out these tools. So the hope being that just like with WordPress, where developers could easily build out and prototype new ideas for business use cases or even just hobby use cases, people can also play around. So rather than the business who's looking for this sort of corner or this use case to solve the market that they are serving and everybody else is sort of stuck with this, if you wanted to create a novel, one idea we had was like a kill switch application in a wallet. So you could say something like, if I don't press this button once every 6 months, send all of my funds to a multi-signature contract that is controlled by my children and my lawyer. And you can create an application like that. Copay has zero business incentive to create something like that. But if you're just messing around 1 week and you want to try and play around with it, you can build it, you can upload it onto NPM, and anybody else can then install it, which I think is pretty cool. And then, of course, it's powered by the enterprise-level security and scale of bcoin. So it's time for a demo. All right, so we got nothing running. We'll refresh, nothing running. Okay, so we're going to start up bcoin now. We have a Docker container that comes with bPanel by default, and I set up the configuration so it's connecting to a reg test network, which is a test network. It's fake coins. I can mine myself, so it makes it much easier to to test, as you'll see in a minute. And that's running, and now I'm going to spin up the front-end server. All right, great. So we have our blank install. Now I'll show you how easy it is to install plugins. So these plugins are not even stored on the computer. You can actually, they're all on NPM. So if, let's do panel. Okay, so we have this plugin, bpanel header. So what that's going to do now is it's going to download from NPM, reinstall it, and it'll show up on the front end. So these are ones that we built ourselves, but you can see here, now we are showing information about the network, the URL we're hosted on, how much if our node is synced, and what version of bcoin we're running. I have this, we have these things that we're calling themes that have a bunch, they're basically bundles of plugins, so I'll show you that now. So all you do is you save, the build sees that you saved it, and it starts to install. The first builds are a little slow because it installs it, repackages everything, but once you're up and going, it's pretty simple. It's pretty quick. Here we go. So we've got a few plugins here. This also has a theme. You can see the logo changed, the background changed. I'll show you, we have a few other skins that make it look totally different. The Genesis theme comes bundled with this plugin called BUI, bpanel UI library, and what I'll show you in a second is you can use these common React components to build out your interface, so you don't even really have to know too much React, but if you can import these fields, you can see exactly how they'll look and build out these components. And this is something we plan on building out a lot more of in the future. Okay, you can see the dashboard, you can see block information, copy that block information, copy that into other websites. Again, what's cool is because this is on a decentralized database, which I'll show you in a minute when I'm on testnet, is I get information on here that is live on the normal Bitcoin testnet, or the normal Bitcoin network. You can see here I've got 5 transactions in the mempool. We got a wallet here. Let's say I want to send myself some money to this address, and let's just send 50,000 Satoshis because I'm rich in reg test coins. Give myself a little fee. Send it, and here we go. You can see also here's the transaction history here, and then the mempool increase. Now what's cool is because this is using Redux and React. These are all different plugins. So you have one plugin that's a wallet plugin. This dashboard is its own plugin that has these widgets. So recent blocks is its own plugin, mempool is its own plugin widget, and it's all interacting using the Redux to get this information. So when the state of the app changes, other plugins can also update their state and reflect the actual state of the app, without having to communicate with the other plugins. So what that means is that a plugin developer can just pull in the state of the app, the current state of the app, and say, okay, I want to display the mempool size here in this part of my plugin. You don't have to do a call to the API. You just pull that in from the state. You can also update the state yourself. All right, so we do a couple things here. All right, so this is a theme. You'll see how it changes pretty drastically, and because of this common library, it filters through all the other components. So what's cool about that is, as a developer, you can use the common table component, and all the other apps will, or all the other, if there's a new theme, that theme will filter down to anything that's using that common component library. And then this is mining so that we can clear the mempool ourselves without having to do anything on the terminal. Yeah. So this is the dark theme. Pretty cool. We got mining here. At the dashboard, we still got 6 transactions in the mempool. I'm going to set a Coinbase address so we can mine to ourselves. Mine, if you can even see, again, remember, recent blocks, mempool are different plugins. We're on height 203 blocks. I'm going to mine, let's mine 5 blocks. You can see here, up to 208 blocks in this plugin. Without having any awareness of each other, this one is also updated to 208 blocks. The mempool has cleared. You can see here, I don't know, right now it only shows the most recent blocks, number of transactions. Okay, so that's how you install plugins. We are, in the next few months, we're going to create an interface so you don't even have to edit the code at all. You would just, from the interface, search for a plugin and install it. It would write to that file and automatically rebundle it. So you won't even have to touch any code whatsoever. And now I'll show you how easy it is to build a plugin. So the demo that I want to do for you today is to build a simple plugin that lets you publish data to the blockchain. Can I speak without the mic? Is that all right? Or
just use that one there.
Does that work? Is that working?
No.
I don't think so. All right. Well. I will.
Just project, they'll be fine.
All right. So we built this tool called bPanel CLI that right now it's just a tool to create new plugins. And it'll basically ask you if you've ever used npm init or, well, git init doesn't even ask me any questions, but npm init will ask you like, oh, what's the name of the plugin? What's the test command? It'll run through these questions. I'm going to be typing as well. So, it'll run you through these questions to help you set up with npm and npm package, but in this case, a plugin. So can everybody see this all right?
Yes.
Okay. So, name of my plugin. Now let's do publish. Play name. So this is, will depend on any other published bPanel plugins. This is because you can bundle plugins together with, you can have cross dependencies. So for example, you can have a plugin that says, oh, I need the dashboard to be part of my plugin to work properly. And that way, when somebody installs the plugin into their bPanel instance, it will make sure that it has the dashboard or it has the mempools plugin in it. But for this one, we don't need it. It will not be making a theme. And would I like to add any additional module templates? Yes. So this is basically the extension API of bPanel, how you build things that the bPanel build system can recognize, so you can hook into the system. And we only need one, and that's the decorate panel. And the panel is basically each one of these is a panel. It's basically a view. So decorate panel, and so now this basically takes a template project. It inserts all of your dependencies. It installs your dependencies. You can also do this outside of the project and do an NPM link to connect them. We have documentation that walks you through how to do that. But for now, I'm just going to do it within the project, so it makes the build system pretty simple. Now, let's go into our project. Great. It comes, let's show you what it looks like. So we have this plugin. It's hard, I can't increase the thing on the sidebar, but this is a project. So it comes with the package JSON. You can see we entered the version, the description, all of this stuff gets pre-populated. The keywords, author, license, the dependencies. It's nice also because with these dependencies, you can make sure you're following the same style guide. You don't have to follow it, but it's nice so that people will be able to that within the ecosystem, everyone's sort of had the same expectations. Also, linter and the style rules. We also have pure dependencies, so we'll make sure that you have bpanel, bpanel UI, and React in it as well. Okay, to get rid of this. Another thing that it comes with is this make file. So it comes with these default commands that you can run to make sure that the build is working. And I'm going to run npm watch, so it watches for any changes. We'll build it to the dist version. It publishes it to the dist file. Okay, so this is the important file when you're creating a plugin. It's just the index.js file. It has some metadata about it. Again, all of this gets set up for you. Remember, we said we were going to use the decorate panel extension. You don't have to even look at the docs to know what the shape of this should be. It just poops it out for you, and you're basically ready to go. It has some stuff commented out that you will uncomment when you're ready to go. So what we're going to want to do for this plugin is we're going to create our own custom view. There's a couple things we need to add here. Sidebar true, so we want it to have some navigation. You just put this in the metadata, and the icon for the sidebar, you can see that there's different icons here. By default, we just use the Font Awesome library. So if you know the name of the Font Awesome icon that you want to use, you can put that in here. For fun, I'm just going to do Bitcoin. That still won't do anything yet because we're not properly outputting the component. So I'm going to create a new file here. We're going to call it publish.js. We're going to make a React component. We're also going to, remember I said we have that common component library. You can, again, look at the docs or even look here what the names of these are. So, right, import header. We want to use the header, so we're going to do that. There's a couple other things I know I'm going to want to use, so we're going to import them here. We have bpanel UI as a dependency, so we know it will be available. Now we're going to for those of you who are not familiar with React, a lot of this is actually just React boilerplate. And now that this is the first time I've done the demo, but I practiced it a couple times. I'm realizing it might just be useful to even do some of this in the bpanel CLI tool. Okay. Now we just need our render. And now I'm going to use the header component. Okay, that looks good.
You're missing an angle bracket.
Good. Thank you. There might be a few more of those, I imagine, but so you can see the watch command saw that, it built it, and our Webpack build should also catch that. Oh, no. Last thing we need to, I forgot, of course, is in the config. So we are building, when you add a new plugin, it won't see it, it won't bring in the changes unless you add it to the list. So the plugins list is anything that's remote, that's stored on NPM. It'll do an NPM install of that. Anything in here, it will add into a local list of plugins that it's going to use. And our is called publish. And what this does is it basically tells the build system, look for the plugin called publish, and look for the extensions that it exposes. So it's going to see metadata, it's going to see this, like we want to have navigation, what the icon is, what the decorate panel is. Now it's going to rebuild it and add that plugin in on the clock. So we'll see how quickly I can do this. Here we go, publish, but not working. Oh, great. Last thing is in here. We want to import publish from all right, that should add it in. Now, while that's getting set up, I'm going to build out some more of the view here. This is just a normal text area.
Those are prefab events that React already gives you, or are you about to implement those?
These are like the browser DOM events, and React will translate these from this is JSX, which is their templating language. It'll translate that into HTML, and it'll have those events on. So these.
I meant the lambda you're passing.
This here?
This got on change. What's that?
Oh yeah, so that is custom. So that I will create my own onChange method here, and we'll do e.prevent default, and then we're also going to do this set state we're going to do data e.target.value. We're going to initialize the state here. And the state and this .set state, that is something that React gives you, and it's a way to more easily manage state within your view components. I'm going to make this an async event method on submit. That for now. All right. See what we have. Okay, so we have a test component. This should build in a second. Or not. This dot Oops. Now, this goes into a little bit of what you can do because of the modularity of bcoin. So again, like what's kind of cool is that we haven't actually done any Bitcoin programming yet. We're just building out a front end. But I'm going to do some quick methods here. We're going to import this scripting library, the scripting module and the output module from Bitcoin. Oh, and then there's also a utility we have that's a client that follows our. We have these API docs here, and what we want to do is, of course, is send a transaction. So you can see how this works. Send a transaction. We're going to use this, the JavaScript method for sending a transaction, which is just wallet client.send. So first, we're going to import a you can see how this works by, let's see. So if we do a const info equals this dot client, I know I have this wallet called primary, so I'm just going to do get info here. And this is going to be the first interaction we're doing from our plugin with, to our first interaction to bcoin itself. Let's see what publish is looking like. There we go. So we have our test component. We have our field that updates. We have our submit button, which updates in a second. Oh, yep, I'll wait. If you don't program regularly with JavaScript, or you're in a job that hasn't incorporated ES6, or I guess async await is ES7, JavaScript gets a lot of flack for sort of like a callback pyramid of death and the synchronous or the asynchronous nature of it. Async await just makes programming asynchronous JavaScript so much easier. All right, so here we go. So we got info, and this is the information of the, let's see if I can. So I did a call to our backend. You can see the balance that I have in my wallet, the account depth, the token. It's not encrypted, so you can get the private key information from as well. So don't try this at home. All right, so let's see. In our time remaining, if I can quickly build our transaction, our op return transaction. Let's see. Okay. One other library we need to use is the buffer writer. So browsers don't yet have native support for buffers, and you need it to send information, certain types of information at least. The scripts need to be read as buffers, so we're going to use this library that JJ also wrote called buff.io. And let's see, so we need, oh, actually, you know what, I have most of this written out, so I'm just going to copy it so you can see what it looks like. And I'll just walk through it since we're short on time. All right, so we're going to pull the data from the state, which is what we entered into that text field. We're going to create a new buffer writer. We're going to write the data that we got to our buffer. And then this script library translates, will compile scripts that you can use in a Bitcoin transaction. Output, basically every Bitcoin transaction, if you're not familiar, It's constructed essentially with an input and an input where your funds are coming from, and an output where you want to send your funds to. So we are creating an output from a script, and that script is just null data, which puts it behind an op return flag. Create our output, add that output to our options that we're going to send then to the client here. And after it sends, we're going to get some transaction information back. And I'm just going to set that transaction information in the state. And then one last thing that I want to do here is output the transaction information once it was successful. So we're going to do this.state.tx. This is basically just a conditional. We're saying if there's a transaction in the state, which means that this was successful, we're going to use the text component now in a paragraph, and info. All right. Let's see if that works. No. Oh.
We've all done that.
Yeah.
Especially when you're doing it.
Yeah. I know this problem though. JavaScript or React is not like objects, so we're just going to stringify it, which makes sense. No, they'll prettify it. All right. That should build. What I also wanted to do as part of this demo was to do this on testnet. So when we get into questions, I'll run that, and then you can actually query the transaction that I put onto live testnet with the hash and see it, which is pretty cool. Okay. There we go. So that's the hash. If this was a live network, you'd be able to query it with that. You can see here as well, we have two of our transactions, because there was the one that failed to display, but it actually went out. Both of those are now in the mempool. So let's mine a block, and those will disappear from the mempool, and those are now forever and all eternity on my fake blockchain. So that's
phony mining where that.
I know, right? Now, I also, when I was preparing for this, I started getting sucked into a rabbit hole of making this, like when I was practicing how this now would be, I made a nice version of it, which is kind of cool. So I'll install it. Once I built it out and I liked it, I then just published it. It's as easy as that. And so now I can install it and show you it all here today. So that'll run, that'll install, and it's actually, oh, you're right. Yeah, all right, we're covered. This one's cool too, because if you're not familiar with what Bitcoin script and op return, all this stuff means, as you'll see in a second, it updates, it'll show you live what your data looks like as Bitcoin script before it sends it. So I'm going to we're going to run this on testnet. And while I'm doing this, suppose I can take some questions. I need to
So you're putting it in a container?
Yeah, I'm running them all in Docker. We have a Docker container that runs bcoin, and then you can also run the front end in Docker, or the front end server, but for development, it makes it a little bit difficult. So like the easy install, just you install it, you run Docker Compose up, and it'll spin everything up, and then you can access it on localhost.
If you look at a cache network who's kind of putting it, like they're building like Docker like containers.
Who is this?
Like what used to be Proton, and then they renamed themselves.
I haven't heard of them. No, they're building Docker.
They're
container.
basically building Docker network or Docker containers, so people can take non-Bitcoin apps and kind of turn them into containers.
Huh, interesting. No, I haven't heard them. Okay, so this is cool. We're running on testnet now, and now, actually, it's having to catch up the blocks, which can freeze up the UI a little bit. But you can see what this looks like on the live network. Mempool or transactions will start coming in. Yeah, this is.
Side note, who actually mines on the testnet?
That's a really good question. We can see actually with a vPanel plugin, the Peers plugin, we can see people that are running nodes, but you can't see if they're mining or not. Might be doing it for development purposes. Like devs will do it just because you kind of need it to support the development network. If you want to just test out your miner as well. All right, this is catching up. It'll get there soon. Okay, so questions. Well, that's catching up. Or do we not have time for questions either?
Sure, a few questions.
Yeah, sorry.
I'll pass it around. Any questions?
You mentioned the word security at one point.
Yes.
Can you expand on that?
The word security?
Yeah. Security as it pertains to bcoin.
To bcoin specifically? So, I mean, yeah, security in cryptocurrency and blockchains is a pretty big subject. It's tough because, you know, the great thing about cryptocurrencies, or some of them, the Bitcoin, Ethereum, the major ones, the decentralized ones, is they put you in charge of your own finances. And
you lose your private key.
Exactly. So ownership of your funds is tied to ownership of your key, and it's basically a password. So if you lose your password or your password gets hacked, that can be taken advantage by anyone. Bitcoin was built to be supported to support a business that does, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars of transactions. So there's multiple layers of authentication that are built into the wallet system. There's admin level, the wallet level, I believe the account level. You have passphrases, wallet tokens, and then admin authorization. Then the node itself also has an API key. We have a script when you're starting up your Bitcoin Docker that will. This doesn't mean anything, so I can show you. You know, we've got an API key that gets generated. So, I mean, one of the tough things is that we can't protect people from themselves. So, and that's actually been one of the interesting things about trying to develop an extensible, hackable interface system is we want to allow people to build new interfaces that won't make it easy for people's funds to be stolen. So part of that is we're just going to try and create some good conventions around, like, don't trust any plugins that manage your private keys on the front end. It's actually, while developing this, and we had to think about security ourselves, it was quite astonishing to realize how many of the major products in the space are completely vulnerable to attack, and it's really only a matter of time. Like, these are systems that are dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars. So, I mean, it's a little bit of a give and take. And in fact, actually having things open source, having a wide community over it, it makes it a little bit more open to competition as well. So if somebody puts out a plugin, we hope to have some sort of marketplace where we will help vet and only allow ones that we trust. But then also people will be able to call out other plugins that don't do a good job. And so it's a really big topic, but Bitcoin itself is secure. Bitcoin has never been hacked itself as well, but still, like, Purse could get hacked if we don't have good security systems around our own, customer databases. But we've built in the same level of security to that as we have with Bitcoin.
So just on the topic of security generally, we've got a crypto security panel on the 19th of June in Palo Alto at Shepherd Mullen.
Okay.
And I have David Husseby from Hyperledger coming, plus 2 cryptographers. So I think it'll be a fantastic panel if you want to come along to that.
Cool.
Question?
Yep.
So I'm trying to get my head around the extent of the modularity of bcoin and bpanel.
Yep.
And the question of security made me start to think about sort of key custody. And I know Purse has to maintain custody of keys for a wide variety of accounts to do the business Purse does.
Yes.
But I'm trying to imagine, could you take, I presume you can take bcoin and roll your own wallet out of it, and
Yep.
therefore you're kind of managing the thing. With bpanel, do you have facilities for users of bpanel published software to custody their own keys, to do purely offline wallets where they're using bpanel to engage in transactions, but they're maintaining their own keys offline?
So there's two parts to this. One of the things that we wanted to do with bpanel was there's a lot of people are interacting with crypto but are not managing their own keys, and even people that manage their own keys are not managing their own node. So you're still responsible yourself for verifying transactions. And part of that is because the people that understand crypto and the ecosystem in general still are not super comfortable, jumping into a terminal and running the commands to start up their node. Also, it takes a lot of resources as well. But one of the ideas that we wanted to do with this is you could, this is not a hosted wallet or a service or anything, right? This is not like Coinbase. This isn't even like my Ether wallet or something. This is something like you have your own node, and then you put up same thing with WordPress, right? Like you have your own database, MySQL database, and your Apache server, and then it will, you can access your front end through that. So this would be an interface to interact with your own node that you're controlling somewhere else. So you would have the same exact level of security that we have ourselves when we're managing our own node. So you would add the wallet auth, you would add the passphrases onto the wallets, and you would have that same level of security to access it externally. The second part is, as well as we're going to build in, we're building out plugins for multi-sig and hardware wallet support, because anything really that you're doing on the browser, it's safe-ish if you're doing it in private browsing mode. If you have extensions, you're basically vulnerable to anything. But what we want to do is basically you're not doing anything with your private keys. It's not stored even on your wallet server or on in your bpanel in your browser. But what you do is you can do multi-signature transactions, or even just watch-only wallets where you can see the balance of your wallet through your bpanel. And then if you want to send funds, you plug in your ledger, you sign transactions to release them to the blockchain. You can do that all through the interface and using Bitcoin's API as well.
So one more question. Thanks.
But I don't know if you've addressed this, but
who do you see is your competitors doing like what you do? Because right now there's so much, which is good, it's decentralized. There's just so much chaos in the blockchain crypto space that it's really hard to decipher who's doing what, who actually has a product, who, that's real and functional, et cetera.
Yeah.
So it'd be helpful to understand who's your competitor, and then if you know that they have a product, because obviously you do have a product.
So I work for company Purse, that's an e-commerce platform. So Purse has some competitors in the e-commerce sphere. We work on bcoin, which is a Bitcoin node and implementation. There's a couple competitors to bcoin, the biggest one, of course, being Bitcoin Core. But there's also BTCD and a couple other libraries. There's Bitcoin J that gives you some JavaScript tools. So there's competitors for Bitcoin implementations and Bitcoin nodes. And then there's competitors in other coins. So the more people that are using Bitcoin, the better off we are. So we're competitors on that in that sense with Ethereum, Litecoin, whatever. For bPanel, I don't think there is a competitor. I don't think anybody is building anything like this. There are wallet platforms, but we're not competing to be a wallet. There are block explorers, but we're not competing to be a block explorer. There are node management softwares, but we're not competing to do that. There's nothing out there right now, as far as I know, that lets anybody develop interfaces that can be pieced together in a modular way, interacting with a full node on the back end. I don't think there's anything that does it. There's not a wallet out there that lets you, with a single string, install a miner interface as well and determine how many blocks you want to mine, for example. Nothing's doing that.
And so is this Purse or this is Purse?
So Purse is we're maintaining an open source project, right? So the same way that React is maintained by Facebook and Google maintains a host of open source projects as well. bcoin, it's something like, contributing to the open source community makes us all better, and it helps. We use it internally at Purse because we need it to support our infrastructure. But there's lots of companies that also use bcoin. They do it for free. We don't make any money from that. Hopefully down the line, there's opportunities for like the Red Hat model, where for large organizations, once banks start needing to have fully validating nodes, they might want to hire people that are experts in it, and they might want to use bcoin because it's the most robust, most extensible implementation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So please give a hand to Buck. It's fantastic.